some of our landings were desperate adventures, we are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
I expected this cathedral to be bustling, but there's hardly a soul to be found here. Without any goings-on, I'll have to move soon. To a place I could help the gullible by teaching the good word.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm Mike Villalobos.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a cursed favorite.
And this week we are talking about Heide's Tower of Flame and the Blue Cathedral. And as you heard, we are joined by the indefatigable Lobos Jr. from YouTube, known for his, let's say, feats of daring do.
Yeah.
I like that word, indefatigable. Indefatigable.
Gary likes to joke that I have a calendar, but I just know words.
Yeah. It is like Greek myths, the things that Lobos has done. I've recommended it before on the show, so hopefully people who are listening are familiar. And also, no slouch at speedrunning either. So
I dabble.
Yeah. Well, good work with that, though.
What would you say are some of your craziest runs that you've done?
Some of the more famed ones are No Heal, No Bonfire in Dark Souls 1, which was... I think it was a feat. It was fun doing as well. One of my personal favorites that was kind of quirky was doing all of Dark Souls 1 while like in the bow aim mode. So while aiming, so you can actually move and roll around in that mode. Very disorienting, but it was a unique sort of fun for me. Turning Dark Souls into a first-person shooter.
It's like that one mod that makes everybody sick.
Yes, something like that.
One of the things that impressed me was the one that you did where it was the clear Lordran run, because it never occurred to me you could do that, but it's totally true. Like, did you ever see that, Cole?
No.
Or go ahead and explain it, Mike.
Well, so I never actually finished it. Dark Souls 2 came out before I managed to, but I got about 90% of the way through the game. Basically, I played all the way through the game up until the kiln, the kiln of the First Flame, and I attempted to start from Firelink and go through all of the areas, clearing all of the enemies without ever touching a bonfire, essentially ridding Lordran of enemy life. Unfortunately, there were some mechanics in the game that caused them to respawn. For example, like area transitions, or if you just went far enough away, that sometimes the enemies would respawn. So I would track off the areas as I cleared them out and say, okay, Undeadburg complete, and move from area to area. Yeah. It was a fun run.
Yeah, the idea of like there just being all of Lordran with you at one end and Gwyn at the other
right.
is really appealing to me. Now it's me and you. So
sure.
It's like some kind of like samurai movie.
Yeah. And definitely like people who watch the channel have known that Lobos has hit the ground running with Dark Souls 2 stuff too. So that's been very entertaining. So previously we felled the last giant and turned our eyes to the other area that you could have gone to from the beginning, the one with the other giant things, and that may or may not be Anor Londo. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, that's just my take, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, you get here by going back past the pit. Sorry. And there's a little tunnel past the Way of the Champions or whatever, and you go into one of those famed sewer systems with the locks and keys and tunnels and whatnot. And a large number of people have said that they got stuck here because they couldn't see that little lever, the pull string.
I know one who definitely, absolutely did not know where to go, and it was simply because of that pull string was so hidden against the wall.
Yeah.
It's something I've heard that is a little bit better with the better resolution on the PC version. Is that it's a little bit easier to see some of those details.
That's cool.
Which would be useful.
Yeah,
sure.
I think
that'll be coming out right around the time, right around the time of this episode. Actually,
yeah,
Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do not have it. I have not double dipped on it just yet, but planning to at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely went here first. I mentioned that in the last episode, and kind of banged my head against these giants for quite a while before I actually found the way to the Forest of Fallen Giants. But it is, and it's also I think it's one of the first areas that's mentioned by the Crestfallen fella when he's kind of going through the different hub spokes. But yeah, so you end up here and you kind of leave the sewer system, walk up these stairs, and you're greeted by this kind of gorgeous view.
Yeah, it is. It might be my favorite view in either game, honestly. Like, just good.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great reveal when you are in this damp, dark sewer, and then you just suddenly pop out, and it's kind of like sunsetty, and the water, the water's much more beautiful than Dark Souls 1, like in my opinion at least. And you're just like, whoa, this is, and you get that Anor Londo vibe, of course, because the architecture is all very similar. But yeah, that was one of my favorite areas in the game for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the quality of the lights and just kind of the sound of this area is really great too. And just I have professed my love for rocky, like wind-strewn beaches and ruins and such. And yeah, this again was like it was like a coal-seeking missile right to my visual cortex. Yeah, so and just as you look kind of like to the left and see stuff that's kind of more intact, and then over to the right as things kind of become more disjointed and more kind of claimed by the sea. And then just kind of like this really spooky sight of what appears to be like the remnants of walkways that are kind of being held up on these pedestals, like sticking right out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, countless people died here.
Yeah, some sort of horrible cataclysm.
Yeah. The one of the things that supported something I've said since we've been talking about Dark Souls 2 is that Dark Souls 2, unlike a lot of areas in Dark Souls 1, is really pretty at so many points. I came here right after Majula, and I was like, is every area a sunny paradise? Is every area in the Souls game somewhere I want to actually be?
Sure.
It's so gorgeous. Yeah. And it's interesting too, taking a look at all of the stuff here, because it's been kind of claimed by the sea. The NPCs mentioned that, and then we'll later find that out from item descriptions and stuff too. But there's also evidence of other kinds of destruction here too, and it's interesting to see this just kind of ruined place, whether it was kind of weakened and fell into the sea, or it was just had known a lot of battle before that happened, or exactly what happened is still kind of a little bit of a mystery, other than the fact that the water took it back.
Yeah. And space isn't quite as spacey-wacy here as it will get in later, areas, because you can actually look back and see the memorial tower in Majula along here, and the coast kind of has the same character as when you look south north. Depending on what you think, when you look in the direction of Heide, it kind of has the same tooth-like protrusion sticking out of it. So you're still very much, proximate to this, although not as close as you would be if you, had traveled those 100 feet in that sewers. You're more than 100 feet away, but yeah.
Yeah. In particular, the kind of the reveal into Heide's Tower of Flame area is there's a couple spots in Dark Souls games that, in my experience at least, I get to, and you kind of stop and then take in the view, and you're like, oh, cool. Like, for example, in Dark Souls 1, right after you beat Taurus Demon, and then you meet Solaire, and then there's kind of a balcony, and everybody's putting down messages like gorgeous view ahead and stuff like that. And it's kind of a similar area for me that I just kind of stepped out. They give you definitely enough breathing room before your first enemy, so you can kind of take it all in and appreciate how crafted the area is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is one of my favorite vistas in either game for sure.
It's a little bit Demon Soulsy. It's kind of like 3-2 when you step out and see the towers there too, because you're in Latria and you're inside the tower, but really this is the Tower of Latria, as just the same as when you step out of that sewer, you are looking at the Tower of Flame in Heide.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the giant lighthouse, which surprisingly is not necessarily the central thing. You're heading there, but it's not. When I read the name of it, I was expecting to go up a series of floors and have this be an indoor area as opposed to a town or a city kingdom. You do, and I also missed this first bonfire, which was also making it difficult for me. And I missed the first one in the Forest Fallen Giants too. For somebody who tries to be, observant, I definitely did this run up a bunch of times for no real good reason. And there's kind of a real limited number of enemies here. Just the two kind of regular enemies, these giants, which are super reminiscent of the Anor Londo giants.
Yeah.
Kind of right off the back, which I don't think anybody, kind of no matter what side of the is this Lordran or not debate you fall on, I don't think anyone thinks that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Sure. They kind of remind me of a mix of the Anor Londo giants, the Sentinels, but also mixed with like the stone armor giants from the forest.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
The kind of mossy, kind of old, degraded armor. But it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that's kind of cool about them, and it'll kind of tie into the next area we're going to talk about today, is, and I didn't really notice this until I was brushing up for the show, is that they drop the blue eye orbs.
Yeah. Like at a crazy high rate, like more than any other thing they drop.
Yeah, which so just kind of lore wanking, like, I wonder if they are here because they are associated with the the Blue Cathedral,
right.
Sure.
Or some kind of trial for it, or agents of it in some way.
Yeah, the trial hypothesis is one that is very much at the forefront right now among people writing into the show, and B, just in general. As what I'm seeing. And, they are the enemy in this area. You've got the ones with the mace, you've got the ones with the sword and shield, then you got the greatsword ones, and then you just face them in various configurations and on, different kinds of footing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that footing, oh my gosh, the mosaic work. Like the mosaic work and the stained glass kind of fixtures that are hanging up there. This is just architecture pornography, is what it is. Yeah.
The so like the main, I think, kind of gameplay conceit for this area are the levers that kind of pop up and change the way that you face the boss of the area.
Right.
Either boss. So if you killing certain people kind of, it seems randomly, makes these levers kind of pop up from the ground.
I'm a little bit bummed out by that, actually.
It's real gamey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, later when that pops up again, where you have to kill somebody to activate something, it's soul activated. And so there's a little bit, it's gamey, but in a way that feels just like a little bit justified. And that's something needs to power this device. But yeah, I remember just playing through this. I remember it was two fucking days ago. I was playing through this on a stream, and I was very unsuccessful at it. But getting stuck trying to just do a run to the old Dragon Slayer, and people in the chat were like, no, you have to kill them. And I was like, why would I have to kill them? This isn't a video game. Like, yeah, it's totally a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of a bummer that that's the case, but so it goes.
Yeah, and I was murdering them anyway because when I play, I've mentioned this before, but like the first time I go through one of these games, I kill everything and check everything out, and then eventually it's like, well, I know what I want to engage and what and what's worth it and what's not, and then I just try to run past things.
Sure.
So it moves towards some like speedrunny type things without ever actually speed running because they're not good enough at bosses.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah.
Trying sometimes, but it's kind of going to be for us, especially in comparison to the last episode, probably a little bit of a shorter episode, just because this area is pretty short. One of the interesting things that happens is when you get up to that first landing and you fight the first mace one, is they drop the first sublime bone dust in the game, which is an interesting lore item.
I mean, it's probably the most explicit connection to the chosen undead you're going to have, because it does. I mean, the description does just straight up say this is the remains of somebody who made a great sacrifice to keep the flame going, and, I'm going to point out when it shows up in different areas because that might be some kind of breadcrumb trail, although they could just be, putting it around to upgrade your flask at opportune points. So I don't know if that's going to be significant or not, but
yeah, I had no idea why this guy's carrying it. Like I couldn't figure that out. Like, he's just making his way to the bonfire, and you're going to kill him on his way. He's just going to do a solid.
Yeah.
but not the case. I think probably like the single hardest thing for me the first time through was the giant room with the 3 of them who chain pull.
Yep.
I'm not sure I've actually, well, at least early game, completely cleared that room. Like the first time, my first playthrough, I think I went there first before Forest of the Fallen Giants, and the early game, those 3 fighting 2 at once is pretty rough. You mess up once, then Greatsword guy will take 90% of your health, and then you got to find an opening to heal, and you're trying to damage them too. And at a certain point, I was like, well, I'm just going to rush that fog gate I see over there. And then I had, as I'm sure we'll get to later, a half-risen platform for the Dragon Rider. So it's kind of very cool.
Yeah. What when your first time through the game, was that the one that you streamed, Mike, that you did the strength?
Yes.
Playthrough?
That was, yeah.
It's always interesting when we get people on the show to kind of learn the first kind of guy they made, the first character they went with.
Yeah, I'm a big... I always carry a big sword and usually a large shield to go with it, and just kind of not necessarily tank. Like, I don't usually wear armor. At least ever since I speedrun Dark Souls 1, it's kind of changed how I play the game. But just basically a big heavy weapon, big shield, and then absolutely no armor, so I can still roll and move around quickly.
Just maximizing both your offensive and defensive vocabulary.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I'm a little confused. Which area are we talking about? Are we talking about that first one that kind of looks directly down onto the boss arena, or are we talking the big circular place with the 3?
The big circular place with the 3.
Yeah,
is what I was talking about. The dome, like the indoor structure.
Yeah. We have we have a listener mail that is pertinent to this, and I'm putting it here just because it raises a point that I wasn't aware of, or I wasn't directly aware of. But Zen Bear writes in via the contact to say, the old knights are there to challenge you, not just kill you. When you enter the circular room with the 2 shield knights and 1 greatsword knight, the 2 shield knights will block off the exits while you duel the greatsword one, though they will step in if you knock its health down low enough, so finish it quickly. When they do move in, run to one of the other doors they were blocking, and the one not defending that door will return to its post to leave you to fight the other alone. A similar thing happens with the next greatsword/shield pair on the way to the old Dragon Slayer. So I noticed this, like if you crossbow the one that's in the center of the rotunda there, it will come out and you'll fight him, but as soon as he's dead, the other 2 will come after you almost unbidden. Right. You would think if they all aggroed in the same way, or if that their AI was the same, they would all gang up on you at once. But there's obviously something more complicated going on here.
Sure.
I feel like I've had a different experience with that, at least with distance weapons. Like, I've never gone up to him and tried to duel him, and I'm going to try it now because it sounds cool. But the times I've thrown something at him, they've come out. Like, from the bridge, if I throw something at the middle one, the 3 of them have come out and chased me out. So maybe it's because I'm not engaging them in the arena, if this is actually, a true thing. But that's definitely, that has been my experience every time I've tried to bait out one of them. I baited out all of them.
Yeah.
Interesting. I definitely have always seen the one come out by himself, and then once you kill him, then the 2 come at you. And there's definitely... I really like the new mechanic that they have, as much as it kind of pains speedrunners. But the idea that they have kind of a guardian stance for some enemies, they just tag them as a guardian, and they'll just hold their ground unless you get really close and kind of, threaten whatever they're surrounding.
Is that a problem for speedrunners because of choke points? Like they always put them right in a place where it's inconvenient for you to run past?
The most notorious one is actually in the crypt right before Felstadt. There's 2 of those armored guys that just kind of sit there. And so if you try to run for the fog gate, they're just going to turn around and poke you. So dealing with those guys is really annoying.
Yeah, it's harder to bait them. Like anything that changes their behavior is tricky. Yeah, I will have to do some experimenting with that. It's also possible that the angle I was at, maybe they saw me, and it still kind of fits into that dueling theory. If because I was being dishonorable by throwing knives from across the bridge, and they're just like, well, this guy's not worthy. I'll never join the Blue Sentinels.
Well, even that third one that's just all by himself, that's guarding that first switch. When you get close enough, he'll shuffle his feet, like he sees you, but he's just kind of holding his ground, and until you get close enough to approach that switch, and then he's like, all right, axe up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's at work. Go easy on him.
Sorry, when you say that, all I think of is like a work dog. Like, don't pet him; he's working.
Yeah, like seeing eye giants.
Yeah, well, they'll clear the way for you.
Eye guardians.
Yeah. Seeing eye old knights.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when a hero dog is, it seems like it's about to break, is when it unleashes its greatest barks.
Oh my gosh! I wish I had a seeing eye dog. They're the sweetest. I mean, while remaining sighted.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if you wish that to the Wishmaster or to a certain monkey's paw. Dangerous thing to say. And there's two things people have learned from this podcast, and the appendix comes out next week. Is one, if you come up to Kole and tell him to eat a bug, he has to do it because his Cincinnati matters demand it. And two, Kole would like you to blind him. So between those two things,
so that he can get a sweet lab or retriever that will be a puppy one moment and then a working silent piece of furniture the next.
Yeah. They are the best people. Like, seeing eye dogs are a better person than I've ever been, or ever will be.
That is the one thing I miss about working at the Center for the Blind is the dogs. Mm-hmm. And people are nice too. But yeah, we should probably talk about what these switches actually do, because I don't think we've explicitly stated.
Yeah, well, because you can see the boss arena. Yeah. From right in the beginning, it's this circle, and you can see the boss there, but he's on this kind of middle platform, and when you hit these switches, larger concentric rings rise up from the ocean, and make the fight a little bit easier. Which is one of these things. I think it was somebody mentioned on our Facebook page, but like, what a hard to justify within the narrative device is that. Like, you can go a block away and pull this switch. It's gonna make this hazard a little bit less hazardous.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
just keep them switched all the time.
Yeah.
And more floor is never a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm really into 100% of the floor wherever I'm at. Like, it doesn't always work that way, but I'm into it.
It's an economy of inverse value, Yeah. You have to pay more to have less floor. It's a sign of status. Yeah. It shows that you don't have to work.
Balance was prized above all things in Heide. But yeah, so you can see the boss from there, and you do these kind of switches. I went left and went to the Cathedral of Blue first. Yeah. Before I went to the actual boss of the area.
I feel like that's actually kind of like a thematic thing. I put this in the notes, but the idea that at least people who came here from playing Dark Souls 1 would see like, oh, that totally looks like the cathedral from Anne Orlando. I'm going to have to go there. And that it ends up being like, a nice little piece of lore candy, but also a dead end. And the way that you're supposed to go, like the path actually takes you away from this thing you're familiar and comfortable with. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if it's intentional, but it's interesting.
Yeah. I'll buy it. It's funny, like on another thing on the Facebook, like some people have complained about the areas that just, have a covenant, but that's always kind of been, that's not that unusual. Right. For Souls. Like there are like several, there are a couple areas, like, at the very least, like Ash Lake is essentially like a covenant house. Yeah.
There are a couple of parallels between this and Ash Lake, actually.
This area specifically?
This area specifically in Ash Lake. I mean, not just the Cathedral of Blue, but everything. I mean, excepting the fact that, Ash Lake is the terminus on a very, optional path, but just the whole linearity of gameplay, lack of stuff to do, scenic beauty, the fact that it hides a covenant, like it is kind of the Ash Lake of this game, I feel like. Yeah. But that's a meaningless assertion and just my opinion, and a way for me to justify saying, again, like with Ash Lake, I really love what this says about the lore, and I love looking at this place, even if the gameplay is not entirely satisfying to me.
There's just not that much to it. Like, I actually like it. It's just, there's a little. So yeah, do we want to? So let's do Cathedral Blue for now. Yeah, since that's kind of the path we took. So a couple more fights. You get to the knight. You have to actually the one where if you want to continue, you have to kill him. The more meaningful switch, which like I was killing everybody, but I read a lot of people online who had a problem with that, and they just had no idea how to get the drawbridge down.
Is there precedence for that?
Precedent for what?
For having to kill an enemy to make the way forward, or to make some kind of item or switch appear. The closest thing I can think of is the snakes at the bottom of the prison tower in Dukes, but even that.
Yeah, they're just guarding it. You can run past those guys.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of recognize several features that they added in. Simply that it seems like they only added them to make it harder for speedrunners, believe it or not. It's easy to say that because we run into those problems, but the idea that you can get hit while entering a fog gate, you have to kill this enemy in order to proceed to this boss, things like that. But I'm sure they just wanted, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I've thought about that too, but it's also, I love the fact that their kind of methods and strategies for getting around them, like more or less instantly. Like I knew about the fog gate thing when I was looking at the very limited pre-release stuff that I did, but it hasn't seemed to slow anybody down really. You just kind of have to kite somebody for a second and you get in. But the lever thing has tripped me up more, and that seems like a real typical Souls thing of punishing impatience. Like when I get sick of it, I'm just going to run to this lever in the Iron Keep. And then get knocked off the bridge with an arrow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
hitting that switch actually gets you up this thing that is reminiscent of the flight of stairs leading to the cathedral in Anne Orlando, and also off to the left here is the item that makes this kind of it's advisable to come here first because you can get the Ring of Binding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Demon Souls, ring, and similar to Demon Souls, you get that item so quickly.
Yeah.
And then also there's a couple, I think you also find a Divine Blessing over here, I believe.
You get 5 human effigies.
Okay.
And I think you get a Radiant Life Gem.
You're right. That's what's next to the chest. You do get a Divine Blessing somewhere else, though, and a Lloyd's Talisman. I know that. Because I remember thinking it was weird that they were here.
Right.
And it kind of supporting some of the Anne Orlando-isms.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you guys ever used a Divine Blessing?
I have. Simply for poison heal, basically.
Yeah.
It's just a little bizarre. I get them, and by the way that they are placed, I imagine that they are very rare and valuable. But I don't think I've ever used one.
Right.
So
it's the kind of thing that you keep around because it's a full heal, and it's no matter how much health you have. But then you end up never using it, and you have like 10 at the end of the game, and you're like, well, they're nice looking. I don't.
With all the dragon's charms and monastery charms that you have, I never end up using those things either.
Yeah.
Rogue water occasionally because of the spell refills, but but you go through this fog gate, and it's the old dragon slayer.
Yeah.
Which is like a really shocking moment that I'm really glad wasn't spoiled for me.
Me too. Yeah.
Were you able to go into this fresh, Mike?
I did go into it fresh, I believe. I did have some guidance to get there, but it was not hinted at all that it was what it was, Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, cool, there's another boss fight. They're just like, you missed a boss, you might want to go over here. I was like, okay. Granted, it was later in the game. I passed him up initially, and people had just mentioned it, and I went back and checked it out, and I was like, I had the same surprise moment, so I was very pleased to see our old friend.
Yeah, it's such a good, and there's so much about this boss fight, and this is something I'm going to keep harping on in the series, is boss fights in Dark Souls 2 that don't exist in a vacuum to other things in the game or to Dark Souls 1. That I think are set up specifically in comparison, and like this when you compare it to the Ornstein and Smo fight, regardless of whether you buy if this is actually Ornstein or an imposter or what have you, I think is really intentional. So like taking something that is the hardest boss fight probably in Dark Souls 1,
sure,
and like a lot of people's most memorable fight, and then saying, you know what, if you didn't have Smo there, this is such a cakewalk, and this is a diminished version of the same person. Like this is him without that, and he is less than, and that's I think what you're kind of supposed to take from it,
right?
And again, playing back into the tragedy and dignity, but also pity, right? I mean, this is a pathetic version of this thing that used to strike fear into you.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And you can fight him right out of the gate. He can be the first boss for you. You know,
it definitely fits the theme of the area everything being dilapidated and kind of old and run down, and then you meet this Dragon Slayer that used to be so epic and powerful, and now he's just kind of like, your typical melee boss with a little bit extra abilities.
You knew this used to be great, and it's sad comparing what it is now.
Right.
It's even sad from a visual standpoint because he looks like a washed out version of Ornstein, like a tarnished, like the armor is tarnished.
Yeah,
sure.
And and the magic has changed. So instead of using lightning, which has traditionally been associated with the sun and slaying dragons and stuff, now he's got this dark nonsense.
Yeah.
He's just doing dark butt stomps. And so it is it exists in comparison to regular Ornstein. So, like, a lot of people have said, like, oh, the bosses in this game are too easy. And they are, like, fairly easy, but I feel like most of them that are easy because they're set up to contrast with something, you know?
Sure.
So, and I think that's true of the next boss we're going to talk about, too.
Right.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
You're fighting him in a church, which is, like, tactically is, really important before you kind of get this guy down, because you can... he has to destroy any pews between you and him. So if you need a place to heal, and if, you can sometimes bait him into doing lower range attacks rather than dashing across the room that way. Same thing with pillars and everything. But he's really not too tough if you have a decent shield and can kind of circle around him.
I can't decide if Ornstein or, the person who Ornstein's soul is possessing has sworn a vendetta against dragons or pillars. Because that kind of seems to be his thing. Yeah.
They're definitely very anti-pillar. Even in the other game,
Well, he ran out of pillars. And Lord Drennan had to...
go to the other side of the world to seek the pillar remnants.
I'm trying to think of other areas that are really rich in pillars that he might enjoy, and there aren't that many.
Forest of Fallen Giants, but the Turtle Knights have a corner on that market.
Yeah. This Turtle Knight pillar.
Traps and snakes versus turtles and pillars.
Yeah. Election 2016.
Yep. This is the best fanfic ever.
Yeah.
But so do you guys think this is Ornstein? Because he shares the moveset, right? Like his moves, accepting the the fact that this arena is much smaller and he has kind of less reason to close ground. His moveset is pretty similar, right?
Sure. It's been brought up to me. I haven't really analyzed it, closely from what my perspective, but the idea has been brought to me that Ornstein in Dark Souls 1 was a phantom, a false version of him, an illusion. And then this one is the actual version of Ornstein, who now is very aged and kind of old and past his prime.
That's my take. Like in as far as evidence for, we have the moveset. We have, you get the old Leo ring from him. Yeah. You get his spear turns into the Dragon Slayer, or his soul turns into the Dragon Slayer spear.
Yeah. Which is not dark this time. It's, it purifies.
Right. All right. And then the case against would be the dark magic and the fact that he looks different and that, this is a different place. But one of the things I like about the Ornstein we fight in Dark Souls 1 not being the real Ornstein is that it ties so well into the theming of Anor Londo in that the illusion is better than the real thing. So like that Ornstein being this tough monster and this being the real Ornstein who's kind of a piece of shit, like is really thematically sound.
Yeah,
sure.
Like the illusion is a better thing, and that's if there's not a better thesis statement for Anor Londo, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean it's Oz.
Yeah.
And
maybe Ornstein was never great. Like maybe he was always kind of crappy, and that explains why he's fighting along with Smo, which in all the conjecture and stuff that we have from Dark Souls 1, he wouldn't associate with Smo. Like Smo is, kind of a piece of garbage. Yeah. And all the conjecture then was like, oh, maybe he just respects him as a warrior, but doesn't like him as a person and stuff. Yeah. And isn't it, doesn't it make almost as much sense that like Guinevere is just kind of, or Gwendolyn, sorry. Gwendolyn is just kind of like, here's two tough looking dudes. Let's throw them in front of Guinevere.
Or engaging in some kind of like hagiography, which is like, here are these legendary knights, as part of this, illusion, let's just really build it up.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so something that we haven't addressed is this Ornstein is the old Dragon Slayer abyss corrupted like Artorias.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems as likely as anything, which is, as they are attempting to escape, or Ornstein comes to follow Guinevere, from Lordran, which, is in pretty dire straits after the ending of the first game. Is he tainted by that, or did he turn to it as, just like with his buddy Havel, in order to better fight the new dragons, which are, associated with the gods, right? With the dark magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about kind of the biggest part about Heide's Tower of Flame that is the it's not, the whole area is not Lordran, is the idea that this is where Guinevere went.
Yeah.
Because we know that she went with Flan, the god of flame, somewhere, and this is the Tower of Flame, and it has Anorlandonian and Anorlandic architecture, which is, that can be how cultures work. Like when there have been marriages of convenience, historically that has happened. Where like an area, if two areas kind of merge in that way, the architecture can follow like traces of it that are not exactly.
Case in point, Istanbul, right? Or case in point, like anything in Greece,
right?
Right. And there's even evidence in this very game of, princesses from far off kingdoms coming and, taking stuff over and bending it to their whim, right?
Right.
Or royalty from far off kingdoms coming in, coupled with the fact that, this is an area that has been conquered over and over again and built over and over again. It's totally a thing that she could have Cleopatra'd this and, completely Grecoized Egypt. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. I think that's where I fall on this, is that, she wanted to make this look like home.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too, especially considering kind of everything else that goes with it, and we'll piece together that stuff as it comes up more in here. But that's also what I think. You beat him, and you get through, and you're introduced to the third covenant we run into in the game, the Blue Sentinels.
Third, way of blue.
And the Covenant of Champions.
Oh, okay.
Company of Champions. Yeah.
I always forget that one. Yeah. No, so yeah, the Blue Sentinels, headed by Blue Sentinel Targray, which is one syllable off from
good gin.
One syllable off from the way that insufferable people pronounce targets.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he'd be the Red Sentinel then. Duh.
I'll allow it, I guess.
Sorry.
That's fine. I would have done the same. Yeah. But this is lawful good if I ever saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to do the alignment correspondence chart with him. I didn't figure him out for a long time because he just wouldn't talk to me and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
Right.
He's just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
You have no place here. Transient being.
You vagrant.
Yeah.
You scalawag. Carpetbagger. Interloper.
But he's actually pretty useful for a couple things. So, like, the Covenant, the way this works is that if you're in this Covenant and somebody is in the, Blue Junior Covenant from Majula, and they get invaded by a Red Phantom, you can get summoned in to protect them from the Red Phantom, and you're kind of to be an escort for them. And in addition, there's also a dueling element. So it is an explicitly PvP arena-based Covenant as well, because you gain access to that basement area. Have you ever done anything with this, Mike? Either you guys.
I've witnessed arena matches. I have actually not gotten in the Covenant myself. I typically play offline, both for the purpose of speedrunning, but also because my PSN has connectivity issues. So I just have to kind of deal with offline, and I haven't been able to delve into online stuff as much as I'd like.
Yeah.
Cole, have you done anything with these guys?
No, I haven't. I consider doing it with my character I'm doing for the show, but I think I want to do the Sunbros for it. I'm a little bit disheartened that this is kind of turning out to be a Gravelord situation by anecdotal evidence, in that somehow network stuff is getting in the way of it being really, truly effective.
I don't know if it's network stuff or if it's just like level ranges and not enough people, like people joining this covenant and not wearing their rings, people abandoning the first covenant. I've kind of heard both. I would love for it to be something that got fixed because it's such a cool idea.
Yeah,
sure.
I plan on, when we do our PvP episode, before we do that, I'm planning on kind of dipping into each covenant.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of this stuff for my playthroughs I've done now, but I haven't done this one very much. So
sure.
Yeah. He's also super useful if you are doing a faith build because he sells bolt stones. So you can imbue stuff with those if you want to scale with lightning with faith. So
nice.
Yeah. But yeah, there's not too much else to say about that. Like, the way to fix this covenant would be to make it so that there is a chance that if somebody who is sufficiently higher level than somebody else, which again is outside the parameters of Red Phantom invading somebody, that you would just be called, like there would be a chance of it, but that would further disincentivize any kind of Red Phantom ganking, which might not be the best thing to do given how much tougher they made it, right? So it would basically make intentional PvP something that really, really had the odds stacked against it.
Sure.
Well, but they also put those areas for intentional PvP in the game. So, like, if you want to just do organized PvP, they've made it way easier than the first one with these guys and with the Blood Bros.
Yeah.
And the Bell Keepers. Where you can just go somewhere and just get PvP instantly if you want it.
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem with them necessarily changing the way that environmental invading works. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
So.
Additionally, this is the covenant that covers the notion of killing people who have sin. So when you use those cracked blue eye orbs from before, it takes you, just like when you were in the Dark Moon Blades, into the world of somebody who does have sin in order to exact revenge on them, which actually seems like the more useful way to go about this than just going around and invading people who were invaded.
Yeah.
I've definitely had one or two people mention to me that they had apparently sinned, but they had no idea why. So if there's something in the game that's just not obvious that you're, acting as a sin, then it should be easy to find people who have sinned and invade them.
It's just like real life.
Yeah.
I'm constantly doing things that are probably considered a sin. Without accent. I had no less than 10 cheese curds today, fellas. So I'm fucked.
Wearing mixed fabric like a chump.
Yeah, exactly. Eating meat on Fridays. So if you go back to the main path, there's not too much to it to get to the boss. There's just like one other guardian who kind of acts in that guardian stance, kind of in front of the gate. You have to bait him out a little bit to get to the second boss that we're going to cover, which is the Dragon Rider. So these guys are Knights of King Vendrick, and they used to ride worms, which would be cool, and in the art book it shows them riding worms. And I was really hoping that we'd run into one that does it, but not the case. And if they weren't good enough to if they couldn't hack it, they were killed by the worms they were to ride, which is super cool.
Nice.
So he's not so much a dragon rider as a dragon rider of Pern, where he just kind of wheels around in a kingdom and reinforces antiquated gender roles. Just name him something else. Name him the Dragoon or something. Because he rolls around with a halberd. That's perfectly fine. Don't call him a dragon rider, please. Just a tease.
It's true.
Yeah. Oh man, but there's something else on the lore about these guys which is pretty interesting, which I didn't know until tonight when I did a closer reading. If you look at the description of the Dragon Rider Great Shield item, apparently Vendrick wasn't always the king of this place. He used the Dragon Riders, and the Dragon Riders were the contingent of knights that came with him to conquer what was here and then set up Drangleic on over the graves of these other civilizations. So Vendrick himself is an invader, if that item description is to be believed.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and that's something we're going to see all the time about this kingdoms on top of kingdoms on top of kingdoms. Like so the kingdom before this did not necessarily just crumble; it was taken by force.
Yeah,
right.
Because Vendrick fucking up. But this is a good. This is the alternate first boss in the same way. Like I think Pinwheel is meant to be, or Moonlight Butterfly, where like this is super easy.
Yeah.
Right.
There's an exploit for this. Mike, do you want to outline what that is?
Yes. If you know the timing, which is actually six of his steps, and you sprint past him, right? You just wait at the fog gate, wait for him to take 6 steps, and then take a sharp turn around him to the right. He will always start with a plunging attack forward and just charge himself right off the platform, and makes quick work of himself.
I've done a playthrough, like a couple of things where I just wanted to see something real quick and wanted to see it. Like I wanted to fight the drag, the last giant for the show without doing a whole playthrough of the game. Sure. And you can run right here and do that exploit, and cash in his soul and just end up with like 18,000 souls as like a bonus starting.
Yep.
Yeah,
and if you're even more inclined to get more souls, you can gather a few bonfire ascetics and then just keep resetting them and do it over and over and over.
Yep. Yeah, he never gets smarter about it. We should mention that you can't pull those levers if you want to try that trick.
Right.
So,
that's with all the levers down.
Yeah.
Or not pulled. Interestingly enough, though, I had a 1% hope chance lingering that when I did this trick, he would reappear on atop a dragon, and then it would be a whole new fight. Because that would totally be Dark Souls, just going, "Oh, you want to cheese this? Okay, here's a dragon."
Yeah, and the area right above him, which is also like a boss arena.
Yeah.
Right.
Like he just kind of comes out of the sea.
It's all of a sudden,
poor Licia.
now you don't get miracles.
I know. You knew you were a scoundrel from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so really this is just one of those bosses where it's circle to the right and then stab him butt.
Yeah, he really could have benefited, like the way that they upped the difficulty for some of the bosses in New Game Plus. Like I was really hoping for a surprise from this guy. Like what if every level of bonfire intensity there was another one?
Right.
Or something like that. Like I just thought that would be really neat, but he remains a pushover from the very start.
Pretty much. Yeah, he's definitely one of those bosses. I was, very anxious when I first stepped through that fog gate, and I was like, ooh, Dragonmire, he's got a big halberd, and just promptly dealt with him, and that was it. So.
Yeah. Not much to him.
There we go, I guess.
Sure.
So the lesson about this guy seems to be twofold, which is stamina management or learning how to roll through his stuff. So if somebody was new to this whole experience, like knowing that you are able to use those invincibility frames to your advantage,
right.
And if not, trying to leave enough to roll away. And that's kind of signposted by the fact that there's a green moss outside of his arena. And just like right outside. And also the notion that, this is something that pops up every once in a while, which is you can affect the boss arena, oftentimes to your advantage, or in the case of the exploit, to your disadvantage, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that happens a couple times in this game, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And also probably to just encourage you to explore the level.
Yeah.
Even if you're not necessarily explicitly affecting the boss arena, the fact that you'll have an easier time with the boss if you actually take in this stuff, you're also going to get other rewards, which is maybe what's kind of trying to convey.
Yeah.
He's got a very versatile soul, which makes sense since you get multiple of them. But you can turn this into a lot of items, none of which I have any experience with. Halberd, a twin blade, a great bow, and a great shield.
Yeah. I do have experience with the bow. I'm doing a bow-only playthrough right now, and it's kind of a larger bow, so it's very slow, but the base damage is considerably better than your short bow, long bow. And I think it has a C strength, C dex scaling, so it's pretty good, but unless you're really putting a lot of, unless you're upgrading it a lot, it's kind of not worth it because of how slow it shoots. You'll get much better out of a shorter longbow that just can keep firing right after each other.
Yeah. Is it a great bow? Does it have like the knockback, like the Dragon Slayer?
So it's not a full great bow. It's like halfway there.
They mean it. They just mean it as an adjective, like great value.
Exactly.
For Great America.
You don't use, any sort of great arrows with it or anything. It's just standard arrows, and it doesn't really have... It probably has more of a poise break, but it's not something that you're just going to stun lock people with.
But listen, Dragon Riders, if we don't convey that we believe in the product, our customers never will. We need to come up with a name that tells exactly how good this thing is. I didn't realize it before, but it's kind of foreshadowing that you can get the twin blade and the great bow from the same soul. Because later, when you fight the one with the great bow, and the
yes,
yeah,
and that kind of plays into the lore too. The idea that these knights are so great that their souls are worth trading for, right? Or it can be turned into something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
I will mention one thing back on the difficulty of it that. I started a run the other day as a bandit who starts with 3 adaptability, I believe, which is quite a bit less than the rest of the classes. And when I got to Dragon Rider, his attacks were considerably harder to dodge. So it was I was confused at first, and then I had to really examine my stats, and I'm convinced that's the problem, not me.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so too. Like I had a similar. I started as a warrior who doesn't have 3, but he has pretty low. Mm-hmm. I think it might be 4 or 5, and was having the why can't I dodge things anymore experience, and then that went away once I got to like 10, and then just got better, as I moved it up. So I like that stat a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see what the actual, if somebody's doing frame counting and stuff, what the canonical version of adaptability is to actually make something that is worthwhile. So if there was a universal target for that stat.
PC version, dog. People will do that. Mm-hmm. The PC version brings with it the tearing apart the code and all of that stuff always. So even if I don't get the PC version immediately, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we go upstairs. To the a bonfire and one of my favorite PCs and NPCs in the game, Lycia Lindelt, who I think is really, really funny.
Yeah.
Is the she is like a TV preacher almost about miracles.
Yeah, and she's so bad at hiding the fact that she is trying to fleece people. It's so great. What is it? I must go to a place where I can gull the. Where I can so help the gullible by teaching them the good word. You straight up didn't change your story, dog.
And then all of the stuff with all the language of isn't it amazing that these things from the gods are in our own hands right now? Don't you want to be a part of that? And then if you leave without buying anything, she's the gods just someone who's stingy, or something like that.
The gods frown upon such soul scrimpers.
Yeah, soul scrimpers. The idea that there are soul scrimpers lends a level of mundanity to this economy based on the literal souls of things. That is really incongruous.
You're not willing to drop a few souls for some wonderful miracles.
Well, you know him. He's feeding soul wise, but hero soul poor.
But I just love the idea of everybody comes here thinking souls are going to be able to break their hollow curse, right? And what they end up doing is, the thing that they feel they are blessed at. Right, or the thing that the thing that will get them the souls that they need. So you have what's his name in Majula, who was displaced after everybody ran him out of his village. So he's selling stuff there. You have Gavlin doing the wheeling and dealing, and you have her just being a straight up huckster, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to get souls as much as possible, got to get them souls.
It's all about that. Make it rain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And weirdly, she is the Lautrec of this game.
Yeah. Yep.
I would not have guessed that, but she is she is explicitly a bad person. She never murders anybody or anything, but later, and we'll probably talk about the actual fight a little bit later. But she is somebody who you can kill through a in-game kind of quest thing.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, my first encounter with her, I talked to her, I checked her store, I went, okay, and then I immediately tried to kill her, and it turned out she was like a level, 800 boss, whatever. It was just insta giving me with all these miracles, and I was like, well, we're not going to fight her anymore.
She's so tough. Like I think in both the Souls games, I think she might be the toughest NPC character that you run into. Like she's really, really hard to beat.
Yeah.
Previously,
sorry.
Or go ahead.
I was going to say it reminds me of your first encounter with the Red-Eyed Knight in Demon Souls in 1-1, and you're like, this guy is so hard, but, I've heard this is a hard game, so I'm going to take him down. You get him to, like, half health, and he just kind of, instantly heals to full, and you're like, what? Same with Licia. Once you get her below, like, 60% health, she just starts spamming heal. I'm like, I'm just going to heal.
And especially if you go to her right away, you don't have the stamina or stamina to completely interrupt that over and over again.
Yeah.
So eventually you're going to get exhausted and she's going to get a heal off and then you're back at square one.
Pretty much, yeah.
And the game disincentivizes you from killing her right away because, of what she does when she sets up shop in Majula.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll talk about that when we go to that area, but that's another one of my favorite character beats for her. But yeah, she is hilarious. Yeah, and it's also, it's a pretty early access to a miracle vendor. I think that it's also kind of lends credence to the fact that they were making a studied effort to make miracles viable in this, as opposed to, sorceries, which were clearly much more powerful in Dark Souls 1, by putting this character much closer.
Sure.
Yeah. And making her more obvious. You have to pass right by her, whereas the sorcerer vendor, I did not actually find in my first playthrough through the game. And I think is a little bit better hidden.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's funny that they're both on the same spoke too.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and like the other thing about like that I'm noticing with my knight that that I've got, like if you're not starting as a cleric, you really have a long road to hoe in terms of being able to actually use miracles in this game.
Sure.
Like maybe being a sorcerer puts you a little bit closer to it.
It doesn't.
Like with your attunement. Oh no! Like
with attunement, I guess.
Yeah. So like but like in any case, only the cleric gets you enough to enough attunement and faith to even be able to use the most basic of spells or miracles rather.
Right.
So,
and miracles are, as you said, they were trying to make them more useful. They actually are used in a number of speed runs now as legitimate high damage spells. So they certainly have worth.
Yeah, they're great. They're just. I think the way they tried to balance miracles and sorceries were to make miracles high power but low cast. But you end up having enough cast through it. And then sorceries are like, I can shoot 60 soul arrows, but they just don't do very much.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like a machine gun kind of thing.
I mean, it's almost like they've got sorcery balance for PvE, but miracles balance for PvP, because PvP is more bound to be short burst kind of things.
Somewhat, even though like later sorceries definitely do enough damage for it, and hexes, are viable for both.
Yeah.
Like hexes are great. As the most powerful I've been in this game is with my hex guy. So
definitely.
So you go downstairs to this area, to this kind of, I feel like, is probably the most unfinished area in the game, or the most feeling like shallow area, which is this flooded kind of church basement kind of thing, which is literally full of dead ends and doors that don't open.
Yep.
Ever. Yeah.
like this area sucks, and I don't like it. I'm just like,
Well, it's two identical versions, except one of them has some water. So you like go into one, and then it's like, oh boy, an elevator. It looks kind of like going down to New Londo. Boop, boop, boop. Nope. Okay. Fuck.
Yeah, you traverse so much distance too.
Yeah.
To where you go like a mile beneath the earth, and it's the same thing but slightly flooded.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Space is so spacey wacy. But I guess if there is a concept of this area, it's just that moving around is hard. Like when you fight the knights, and then you fight them in knee deep water, which kind of preps you a little bit for the next boss.
Sure.
So I think that's maybe the idea, if there is an idea behind it. But it's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting past the first group of knights in there. You head down the stairs. If you turn left, there's a knight there, and then there's like a nook in the wall. And I was like, oh, there's got to be like a hidden door here or something. But it's just kind of like it's just carved out in the wall, and it's absolutely nothing. And then there's like a couple of those later, and I was like, well, okay.
Yeah. Well, there's one that has a couple souls in it. I was like, okay, some people died here for some reason. I don't know why, but maybe it'll make sense. I'm going to find another one of these, and there's going to be like a mimic in it or a trap or something like that. But no, the next one's just empty.
Yeah. Maybe they were looking for invisible walls also.
Yeah, they starved to death looking for invisible walls. Yeah. I'm just going to hump this wall until I can hump no longer. Yeah. They called me a hero. Or a great soldier. But, yeah. I don't. Yeah, this area is probably my least favorite kind of section of the game.
Yeah,
it's not huge, but it's a bummer.
I mean, that there is something interesting about it, which is you've got this blasted hole in the wall that connects you between two very disparate areas. Some place that was at least one time very sacred, and then they're going to be talking about next episode, which is basically like a slave trade route.
Yeah, Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Like a pirate's life for me. Or the island they sent people to in Pinocchio.
Yeah.
That terrifying thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of Heide's Tower of Flame and the Blue Cathedral. Mm-hmm. So I think we kind of covered the, is this Anne Orlando thing, at least our take on it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not monolithic among people who listen. I'm sure people have very dissimilar takes on it. One thing that we want to do, though, do in each episode, is kind of do a Meanwhile in Majula thing, because as that area evolves, we gain access to new things and new NPCs. Mm-hmm. So what has changed in Majula since we were last there?
Well, Kale has set up shop in the mansion, so long as he got all those skeletons out of there.
Yep. Yeah. That mansion is very interesting to me. Like, I feel like that is super lore significant. And we can talk about it now, even if we don't tie all the strings to it. So it is a place there's a huge library that has that huge book, like that giant size book.
Yeah.
In it, which I don't know exactly what that is. I have like an idea about it. But the most important thing is you go down in that basement, you get your soul vessel, but you also find the Lord vessel broken in pieces.
Yeah.
That is huge. That is a big deal. And I've seen it theorized, like maybe that's why you can warp between bonfires all the time now. Like that power has been released into the world, which supports my this is not Lordran theory, and like that's why there are all these parallels,
Interesting.
Which
I actually I never recognized it as a broken Lord vessel. Is it near where you pick up the soul vessel, or?
Yeah, it's kind of strewn. I wouldn't have recognized it on my own. I can't take credit for that. Somebody pointed it out online and put them next to each other. But it's definitely the same thing.
Wow.
It's kind of strewn outside that little room down there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's the exact same patterns and everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. I'll have to look at these screenshots. Make sure, like, if you can put a link in the notes to some kind of comparison, because I just thought it was like a gigantic cairn, or some kind of like brazier or whatever. Just that like, because that area, like in the basement, is all rubble, right? Like it is like breaching into some kind of other ruin. So I just kind of figured it to be the wreckage until I heard this and went down and took a look at it. So
yeah, it's the same. It's the patterning that's the same. So it's literally got the same engravings.
Yeah,
on it, and they're like, it will be easy to pull up an image of them next to each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I'm thinking that somebody who is here, who is studying, some kind of scholar, maybe a scholar that we learn about later in the game, who maybe got a hold of this thing that maybe took it from somewhere, maybe fucked it up and it blew up and kind of caused shit to go down.
Yeah, we're gonna have to keep that secret for now.
Yeah. So just there's lots of maybes. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You also can talk to. Sorry, my cat is really flipping out. You can hear that. Kale is kind of interesting too. At this point, we talked about him a little bit last time, and a little bit about that map. But he, like the idea of him kind of like thinking these fires, are restoring his sanity is really cool.
Yeah.
I'll say the first time I went into that mansion, gained access to it, and saw the skeleton, I was convinced that it was the new Tomb of the Giants or something, and I was terrified. I was like, no, I don't want to do this again.
No, not again.
And sure enough, it was just a quick dead end. So
yeah, that makes sense though. Like if that was an alternate way into the pit or something.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is in no way the new Tomb of the Giants, but
kind of. But yeah,
is.
if it led into the Grave of the Saints, maybe from a different angle, like that, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Valencia, if you exhaust our dialogue, will set up shop back here, which is super handy to have somebody who sells unlimited life gems right next to the bonfire. She also, I didn't realize this until I was reading about her today, but if you spend enough money with her, she'll give you a silver covetous serpent ring.
Yep.
10,000 souls, which is actually a very small investment to get that, because it's I believe it's the +1 version of it too.
It is.
Yeah.
Super good. And then we didn't really talk, is it Mogwin the armor?
Oh, Maudlin, yeah.
Yeah, Maudlin. We didn't talk about his arc at all last time because I didn't know about it when we last recorded the episode, but I've gone back and spent money on him because I never really, would buy boss armors. Like by the time I'd have access to them, I would have, something I'd already put some Titanite into. But his character arc is really funny to me too. It's like this game has a different sense of humor than Dark Souls 1 does. Between like this and Lycia, but like this guy just like at some point he's like, I'm rich. Like he's like literally just kind of says the meme. Like
Right.
as it, and his posture changes and stuff. It's really funny.
Yeah. Like he starts out all humble, saying, "Yeah, I was chased out of my homeland by the Blue Sentinels." Oh wait, the Blue Sentinels are organized crime elsewhere. We forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
and then what is it, like 20,000 souls, and he starts opening up more of his inventory. But he becomes straight up like Rockefeller.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, which and it ties into the people. These people who are hollowing are forgetting themselves, and like he just has a lot of money now, so he's like, I must be an asshole. Like, if I woke up with like tons of land and millions of dollars in my bank account and amnesia, I would probably assume that I'm an asshole.
This is how people act, right?
Yeah, like this is. I've seen some movies. This is probably what kind of jerk I'm supposed to be. Buy, sell.
Buy, sell. Somebody who doesn't become a jerk is Lenegrast.
Yeah, good segue. That's true. Yeah, and he you can let him into his shop and unlock his inventory, which is super useful, obviously.
Yeah,
and get more of his dialogue.
Yeah, and I like the way that upgrading works in this too. Just because you don't have to you really only have to get access to one extra guy in an area that comes up pretty soon. In order to do elemental, infusions. But regardless, it only takes, regular Titanite to upgrade any given thing.
For the most part.
Oh, yeah.
Like a couple
of like just like the Twinkling and the Dragon Bones and stuff. But, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he talks about his daughter. Like, he really is all about setting up shop and, really putting down roots, which is what Majula is all about.
Mm-hmm.
He's also very skeptical about your survival. I notice at least every time he's like, "Oh, you made it back? Oh, well, okay. I guess I'll sell you some stuff."
Good for you.
Listen, buddy, I am your only customer. Treat me like Maulin does.
Exactly.
Yeah. Additionally, what's his name? Crestfallen. As more people come back, he starts like it's a nice warm thing. He says, "Oh, this feels more like a home now."
Yeah, he cheers up.
Yeah,
and if you get enough people there, he gives you something. I can't remember what it is.
I can look it up.
Yeah, it's a piece of armor or it is a ring, I believe. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, he cheers up. Yeah, it's kind of like I get a little bit frustrated the inconsistency with which people will have new dialogue. Like, sometimes I'll do something that I consider to be significant, and people will not say anything new, and then I'll do something like, "Oh, I killed this rat boss," and sweet Shalqua will or Shalkio or however you pronounce that will automatically have something new to say. So
and sell new merch.
Yeah,
like I had no idea. I knew that had happened during my first playthrough, but I had no idea what triggered it until somebody had mentioned it at one point in my streams, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's so random."
Yeah. I think Chloanne, when she gets back here, is the one who most explicitly upgrades her inventory with your progress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
she's the one that I end up checking back with constantly, just because I'm always hungry for Titanite.
It's just so hard for me to break my BioWare tendencies, like Mass Effect or whatever. Every time you go back to home base, my inclination is to go and talk to everybody,
right?
Because that's when stuff happens after you achieve things.
Sure.
Yeah, and it fires inconsistently is the thing, so it sometimes does work.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm. So Crestfallen Salden will give you a Soul Vessel.
Okay.
If you get Melentia, Alicia, Carhillion, Rosabeth, and Chloanne to Majula.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Valuable.
Yeah, super valuable.
Definitely.
Yeah, do we have any wrap-up thoughts about this area, or just kind of like this point in the game, I guess?
I don't know. I feel like, after this, kind of the confusion about where to go gets a little bit less murky, just because at the very least both paths end up at the Bastille. So that kind of lends a little bit more focus to it. And I think that, the other two paths will open up shortly. And by that point, people will have, or at least I had a better sense of the structure of the game, with the cops and with, the shaded woods kind of being secondary areas. Things become just a little bit more clear after this. So I think that we're going to see a lot of the confusion die out.
Sure. I think it was kind of an interesting contrast between the two areas, the Tower of Flame and the Fortress of the Fallen Giants, in that almost every enemy you encounter before the bosses are kind of challenging, especially early game. You take a lot of damage from them. They got a beefy amount of health. And then in the Forest of Fallen Giants, they're kind of weaker enemies as you work your way to the boss. But then the bosses are a little more challenging in the Forest of the Fallen Giants. At least Pursuer is. But then when you get to the bosses of the Tower of Flame, they're kind of, these old, washed-up bosses that are kind of easier to take down. So I've definitely known a person or two to start out in Heide's Tower of Flame and just be completely, downfallen from not being able to get through the area. And it's kind of interesting that they do that between the two areas, I guess.
Yeah, like they're so different, and they're both the two areas available to you from the start. Like we talked a little bit about how, like, Dark Souls 1, you have a lot of options in the beginning, and then, or you have fewer options in the beginning, and you have this kind of constrained middle, and then you can tackle at the end in any order. And this is kind of the opposite, where you have not that many options in the beginning or end, and you have this very open middle.
Right.
So, yeah. So next time, we as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about Dead Man's Wharf. And we are going to be joined by Riff from the Video Games Taco, or Video Games Hot Dog podcast.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I really like that podcast. It is one of my favorites, and he is the one of those people that I have not met yet. So being able to cast with him and even talk about this great area is going to be a huge joy. So I encourage everybody to check back in.
Yeah, that's going to be super fun. If you have things to say about that, get in touch with us, and we're going to be recording that a little bit sooner than we usually do because of scheduling stuff. So from when you hear this, you have,
until Thursday.
Get us your responses when you hear this at Duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yeah.
Mike, where can people find you?
I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Twitch.tv/LobosJR, Lobos Jr. And I'm usually doing some sort of crazy challenge run or speed run. Likewise on YouTube, Lobos Jr. Gaming. So those are my two main outlets there.
Yeah, it really could not have a higher recommendation for me. Like I've spent hours and hours. Like I really enjoy watching you play. So
well, thank you.
Very impressive, and I just want to say again, thanks for coming on the show. Like it was
not a problem. It was a pleasure. The lore sides of things is not something that I typically dip into, at least until people have constructed, these videos, and then you go watch them and you're like, oh, okay, cool. But it was very interesting hearing that kind of the side of the land in Dark Souls 2. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want to find us, you can find us at Duckfeed.tv along with several other shows. Cool. What other shows do we do?
Well, we do Watch Out for Fireballs, which is about retro games. The episode coming up after you hear this is about Shadow of the Colossus, which we are excited about. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, it's another thing you speedrun, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah, it's Soulsy in its way, too.
Certainly.
Yeah. So we really like that show. In addition, we also really like Abject Suffering, which is our bad games show, nominally, and then whatever we want to talk about in actuality. The most recent episode about Harley's Humongous Adventure, we talk about the miracle of womanhood. So...
Yeah. Hopefully you guys are on board with that.
That game has an excellent soundtrack. Just saying.
we've found that about a lot of games.
Yes.
For that show, just like very good soundtracks that are kind of shit games.
Yeah,
right.
These hired guns in the 90s, you know, being hired by like THQ and EA and stuff.
Right.
We also Cole does a show called The Level, which is a video game roundtable discussion with some college buddies. It's been going on for longer than you've been alive, and is high quality. And me and Nick Glauber do a show called Check It Out Comrade, which is about indie games. And we had a skip week because we lost the audio from an episode, but we were back on schedule the day before this comes out. So sorry about that.
It is highly recommended.
Yeah, and losing, I mean, just anybody here who records things, like losing audio from something is the worst.
Yeah.
Like podcasts are fun, but they do not have, doing the same subject again is very hard as far as like replay value
Sure.
goes. It's hard to try to be spontaneous again when you've just said the same things. So it's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. And I also do a survival horror blog called Hexcrank. The article about Uninvited just went up. I like it a lot. And I'm going to try and get on a more regular schedule. I commented on The Level this week that Dark Souls 2 blasted more of a hole in my life than I expected it to. And I am just now recovering from the aftermath in ways that I didn't expect I would have to recover.
Part of you was subsumed by the sea.
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk about them more when we get to them. I almost wish I didn't say that because it makes more sense to talk about it in the body of the episode. Mm-hmm. But how we think the Hyde Knights fit into this.
Oh, yeah.
Because they clearly do, and they have the same name and everything. And I just feel like, that was dopey.
It's a little goofy.
Yeah. We'll bring that up when we come across them again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know exactly how they do. I was just wanted to throw it up there. Yeah. And if you want to, I have some music and stuff for sale on the Duckfeed store, and if you want to read writings by me, I write on the yearbook office from time to time. So you can find articles for me there. I think that's probably about good.
Yeah, just about. Duckfeed.tv/tipjar. Use the Amazon link. That helps us out.
Yep. Huge help. And ratings, reviews, always helpful.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. So.
Great chatting with you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So, until next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, it's so funny that you bring up 3 games that I'm very familiar with as the Uninvited and Harvey's Humongous Adventure, and they kind of obscure games, but whatever.
Great minds. I watched you. Or I'm sorry. I apologize for cutting off. I didn't mean to.
No,
I watched you do the speedrun of, and then I proceeded to do it after I said sorry. Just do it. I apologize.
Oh wait.
I watched the speedrun that you did of Shadowgate.
Oh
it was huge to me. I was like, who's speedrunning Shadowgate? That's amazing.
I know, right? That was one of the first big games when I was a child, and it took my brother and I maybe a month or 2 to play all the way through, and we wrote letters to Nintendo Power, and we waited on that and everything. I actually have a Shadowgate tattoo and a Shadow of the Colossus tattoo. Man, those are my kind of games.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure if you guys were aware, but I'm actually in 3 bands that are all dedicated to playing video game music on live instruments, rock band style, basically. So that is a thing I do on the side. So,
what are the names? Can you find them online? Are they?
Yes, the Returners is the one that I play with the most, probably.
Nice.
That's an excellent reference.
Right. I used to be in one called Descendants of Erdrick, and that was the starter video game band for me, and that was a reference to Dragon Warrior. But we played for about 3 years, and then went our separate ways and made our own projects. And so there's the Returners. There is Gimmick, after Gimmick, the game on NES, and then Lords of Thunder, which is Lords of Thunder on the TurboGrafx and Sega CD. And we were going to exclusively do covers from that because it was basically just a metal band that did the soundtrack for that, and it seemed perfect. But we just kind of pick and choose metal songs from here and there.
It's a pretty good metal game, or a pretty metal name. Lords of Thunder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I've heard the Descendants of Erdrick before. I feel like I think in the early days of being able to when I first had the internet, and I think it might have been mislabeled as something by the mini bosses.
Oh, that's interesting. We very often got a a likeness to them because we did very straight covers, and that's what the mini bosses kind of created the video game music genre with just very straight covers of the original tracks. And yeah,
that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I've dabbled in that myself. Like I was in a band called the Festival Planning Committee from
Nice.
Final Fantasy VIII, which was our video game cover band.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, super fun. There's no recordings of that band, but we played live a bunch.
Cool. Very cool.
So, yeah, super cool. All right. Well, I don't know where that will end up in the episode, but until next time, what can they do?
Look up those bands. They can also what do we say to sign off on this?
Seek misery.
Seek misery.
And swallow you whole.
Like it has so many others. Mbasa.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon